Well, hello and welcome to Take the Wheel with me, Heather Dewar, Asher Doyle from People's Ford, and entrepreneur and business owner, Catherine Lawson. Catherine, how are you? It's episode 2 of this podcast series. Brilliant to have you here.
Thank you very much. I'm thoroughly looking forward to the discussion.
Yeah, we have so much to talk about. How are you, Asher?
I'm very well, thank you. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday.
Happy
to you
Monday.
too. Weather's not great today. It's been a lovely weekend.
I know, but it's just a wee bit dull. But it's not raining. It's always positive.
Always
a positive.
Also, got the old coffee on the go.
Positive. I know. Monday mornings and coffee.
Absolutely. Catherine, we've met before. We've met before doing a little bit of work actually for People's Ford, and just fascinated by your business because you've in a kind of roundabout way become involved in the food industry.
Yeah.
You've been a teacher in your previous life. You've got kids. You're a family woman as well. You've got so much to your glowing past. So let's kick off with a little bit about what you're doing now, because you've got involved in plant-based foods.
Yeah. So we started Barefaced Food 2 years ago, right at the brink of the pandemic, which was perfect timing, as you can imagine. And at the start, the aim was always to deliver healthy plant-based food to people. But we'd hoped to have premises very early on. That didn't happen with COVID. But during the pandemic, we found that there was a real appetite for plant-based food, healthy food. People were questioning nutrition and well-being. And in a lot of ways, that period launched us. So when we came out the other end of the lockdown, we were ready to open premises. And we now have our bakery and coffee house, obviously, in Ayr that you visited with the Mustang.
The beautiful cakes.
Oh, very nice.
Brownies.
Yeah. We should probably explain. We did a lovely video for People's Ford, and Catherine was the lovely host, and Asher and I went along with the lovely
to try the delicious
Mackie.
cakes with the beautiful Mackie. I'm forgetting now. I'm more focusing on the cakes, but
really
no,
beautiful. You got the cakes, I got the car.
It was very nice. But no, it was. Do you know what was so good about it was to see meet you in person, obviously, but also to take a bit of a look behind the scenes and to see what was going on in the kitchen, and also to taste the food, because you must be the same, Asha. I was quite blown away by the amount of food. I'm not vegan, and I must admit I'm quite behind the times when it comes to plant-based food. You've really got me interested though. But just seeing it and seeing what you can do with it, I was amazed.
I think that was always one of our aims, actually, was to kind of debunk the myths around vegan food, if you like, because we're not vegan. We would call ourselves plant-based. So the majority of what myself and my family eat, and it's a family business, is plant-based, but we allow for occasional limited animal products in our diet. And what we wanted to do was show people that plant-based food can be exciting, it can be colourful, fragrant, flavoursome. And that's a kind of ongoing challenge for us, because there's so much more out in the market now than there was even a year ago or 2 years ago. So we're constantly having to innovate and create and change menus and think ahead, because there's just so much happening. It's a really exciting part of the food industry to be in just now.
I think it is like a business trend, isn't it? Which was so nice to visit you and see somebody actually putting it in place, because it's very easy for a lot of food places now to say 100% sustainable, plant-based, and all these like buzzwords, keywords, but you really don't understand what it means. And then visiting you could really understand what sustainability actually meant and how it worked, and like you say, how beautiful all the like food, like your Buddha bowls and everything are. Beautiful.
Yeah, so nice. Talk us through plant-based food. What is it?
Okay, so plant-based food, there's a big difference between vegan and plant-based, and people very often get the two confused. And in short, I think our understanding is, if you are vegan, you eliminate all animal products from your diet and lifestyle. If you're plant-based, the majority of what you eat is based on plants, but you might allow for occasional animal products. You might eat eggs in your diet, for example, or eat fish once or twice a week. But the thing that both have in common is the impact that way of eating can have on the environment. So from our point of view, we've always said from the get-go, this is not an all or nothing approach. We are not trying to strong-arm people into veganism. And we're very much about, you can change the way you eat. It could be one meal a week, it could be one meal a day, but all those small steps of change, where you are saying no to meat and yes to plants, have an impact on your carbon footprint. So it's small steps of change, but whether you're doing it on your own or we're doing it collectively, the impact on the environment is unarguable now. So it's a really good time to get people interested in plant-based eating, because it's achievable. I think the thing that we're finding when it comes to sustainability is that it can feel like a completely overwhelming concept for a lot of people. How are we going to make our lives sustainable? What can we personally do? Changing the way you eat is a really easy way to do it. It's small steps, big impact.
Like you say, there's so much, isn't there, from packaging of food through to what you eat and how you eat it. And I think it is just education. Like, you're quite keen on telling people like it's not difficult. Like I think that is like knowing I'm not a plant-based diet, so it's just trying to understand, well, what does it mean and how, because it's just as easy to go in and get like diced chicken and throw that in your meal and you think, okay, that's an easy dinner.
Absolutely.
Whereas it's just understanding what do you replace that with and how do you replace it. Oh, definitely.
And a lot of it also is, I think it's the myths, isn't it? I mean, you just kind of, said that there. It's like sometimes you need to just try something. You need to just take that big step forward and just try something and tackle change, if that's how you want to put it, before you can become involved in it. And I think it's like a barrier for a lot of people. It just seems like, plant-based foods, it seems like a thing that, is quite a serious route to go down. And it's not really. I think it's just about making those incremental changes and maybe just putting a little bit of plant-based foods into your diet to start off with.
Very, and it is achievable. It is, and people, surprisingly, when they start to think about it, recognise that there are probably several meals they're having along the week that are plant-based. They just haven't really thought about it. Or certainly several meals where they're not including meat. So whether it's vegetarian or, they might still have cheese or eggs in there, meat's the big one in terms of the impact on the environment. So that's the thing, if you can cut anything from the diet, take meat out your meals a couple of times a week and start having fun with it. I mean, we have a lot of fun in the kitchen and we cook things that go really badly wrong. I mean, we've had a lot of disasters. But a lot of good things, and getting creative in the kitchen's a lot of fun. You start connecting with that creative part of yourself again when you're in the kitchen. Makes you explore food, flavour, taste, colour, all the different things that are integral to cooking. And just enjoy it, enjoy the process of exploring what the options are. And
I wonder whether, do you not think maybe more and more people are going to start going down that route anyway of plant-based foods just because of the cost of food?
And because it's beautiful. Like, I know it sounds so silly, but your meals, like from your Instagram account, it is beautiful. Like, it makes you want to, it genuinely does make you want to eat it. And surely if you're eating food, you know what it's like, if you eat food that's colourful and lovely, you automatically feel happier and nicer rather than just having the pesto chicken salad that you're going to have for your dinner. Like, if you have something beautiful, then you genuinely do start to feel, well, you nicer and healthier.
I think that's true, and that's why we spend so much time, and we call it the art of food. You've got to make food look good to people. And I was laughing with somebody the other day, another businessman who came in, and he was chatting about how our profit margins are getting squeezed with fuel hikes and food hikes and all the rest of it. And, I fully admit I'm a bit free and easy in the kitchen, a bit of a free spirit, so I'll be tossing on the microflowers because it looks really pretty, and it's like £4 a packet, and I'm moving on. We've got one per plate now, so you've got to really kind of rein it in, but you want the food to look really attractive to people. Because we've come a long way since the lentil stews of the 70s. That was what we all associated with vegan food. And the plant world is colourful and bright and vibrant, and you want that to come across in
definitely.
your food.
So why did you go down this route then? Why specifically this business?
Well, it's interesting because I think the food business was always going to happen one way or another. Because I look back to, one of my earliest memories is standing on the stool in the kitchen, stirring a sauce at the hob with my mum. I was obsessed with food from a wee one. And she was very good. She gave me that space in the kitchen to go in and explore and do what I want. She had me, I think it was child exploitation when I look back now. She had me doing dinner parties for her by the time I was 9 or 10. She would be entertaining, and I'd be in the kitchen stirring the sauces, plating up the puddings. I thought that was genius parenting. So the food interest was always there. But the moment came for me when I burnt out my teaching career. And I really spoke about that before, how after 25 years, I just kind of hit my wall in that. And I'd worked with some very challenging young people in the west of Scotland at that time. And there was probably a shelf life to that job. And at the time when I stopped, I thought, okay, potentially another 15 years in teaching. I don't want to do that. This is the time to make the move into a food-related job. And I think because I'd had the burnout and I started looking at food in connection with our well-being and how to recover myself at that time, I started looking at the nutrition side of food, and that led me very much into the plant-based world. And when you start looking at that, you can't fail to see the links between what we eat and the environment. So you're looking at planetary health, personal health, and it was a no-brainer for me from that point onwards. I thought, okay, I can start looking at plant-based food and how I can prepare that for other people. And I can also take my love of cakes and plantify all of them, if you like. Take out the dairy, take out the eggs, make them all plant-based, which is what we've done. And that was a kind of challenge I set myself. And from there, we were able to see the demand for it, and the business grew. And I said previously that lockdown served us well in a lot of ways, and it did, because it allowed people to order good food direct to their door, and it allowed us to test the market. So from there, we were able to then decide what direction to take the business in?
I guess it's interesting because you weren't an entrepreneur before, as you say.
No.
You were a teacher, so to go from a very steady job, but to realise, right, that's it, I've had enough. You know, with everything else that comes, all the security and pension, I'm sure, and everything else. What made you ultimately take that step to say, right, I need to just get out?
I'll be honest with you, it's a terrifying step to take. I'm not going to pretend it was an easy one. I am not a natural risk taker. So for me, the idea of leaving a secure job with a pension, with sick pay, with regular leave throughout the year, what was a huge step, I would have done it an awful lot sooner had I been a natural risk taker, because that desire to go into the food business had been there for 10, 15, 20 years. It's always been in the background. And I think it was the point when I reached the realisation that I can't go back to this job. When I did hit the burnout, I was almost forced. It's like being pushed off the cliff.
You either go back or you don't. Yeah,
exactly. And I knew that going back was not going to serve me well anymore. So in terms of my own well-being, believe it or not, I had to then become a bit of a risk taker and decide that's the point. I'm going to have to just jump now, take the leap of faith and hope it works. And still, it's a bit of a struggle with being an entrepreneur, because month on month, I don't know if we're going to survive. You come through COVID, you think, what's going to happen? We had a recent bereavement. We had to try and navigate our way through the business with that. And no 2 months are the same.
So I can imagine no 2 days are the same.
No,
yeah,
exactly.
Like never mind month to month, like day to day.
Yeah.
You just don't know with everything that goes on. Everyone's fuel prices and everyone is watching what they spend that little bit more. So it's not a matter of just going out to get a nice coffee. People make a day of it now. Yeah. It's not just like something to grab on the way, whereas it's an actual experience because everybody is watching what they now spend.
I think, and we're mindful of that. It's a treat for people. People come in here and they spend their hard-earned cash with us. And you've always got to remember that when you're in the food business, and you've got to deliver something that's worthy of that hard-earned cash. You know, we've got to remember it's that two-way relationship.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I think the whole concept of entrepreneurship is really interesting as well, and I'm sure there'll be lots of people watching this who are entrepreneurs. When it comes to getting into that industry or the business of being an entrepreneur, because it is a bit of a business, as you know. It's not just about doing your business when it comes to plant-based foods and everything else that comes with that. It's your persona and everything else that goes behind the scenes. It's actually quite hard work. But you've got to deliver in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, and that's been the huge learning curve for us, because especially when you start out as an entrepreneur, you are everything. So as you know yourself, you do the bit where you're public facing, you have to think about your social media, you're doing the behind the scenes bit, the hard graft in the kitchen, you're thinking about sales, you're thinking about marketing, you're building a network, you're connecting with the business mentors, the people that will take you through that journey of being an entrepreneur, because you can't do it alone. That's the biggest lesson I learned. You absolutely cannot go into it thinking you know everything. You've got to find that network around you, the people that will bolster you, that will give you the knowledge you need, all of that. But it's a one-man band at the start, and you're pulled in all different directions, and people often use the phrase, they're too busy working in the business to work on the business. And that's a daily challenge.
That's so true. And that's the pitfalls. You have to try and avoid that, don't you? But it's so hard to avoid, because you have the idea originally, and for you it was the bakery and the plant-based foods. And actually you're invested in that and you want to be a part of it, but actually, and you kind of said it in your answer there, you do need to step back and let others not take control, but get involved and help run it for you.
It's very difficult. You can imagine letting go of anything. It's very difficult.
100%.
But a business is like a baby almost. It's the first time you hand your child over to a babysitter, you think, dear God. And it's the same with a business. You have to bring on board people you trust. And I'm hugely fortunate because I work with my son and his partner. So we are a core team of 3 as a family, and we have 3 other young people who have come on board with us, 2 of whom came to us through the government Kickstart scheme. So they have trained their way up with us. They're moving on with us. It's lovely to see. But we're a tight team. We're a close team. I think had it not been for that, I don't know if I'd have survived. And simply because so many businesses during COVID, hospitality businesses could not get the staff to keep the business going. You hear of well-established hotel chains and restaurants that have had to close doors because the workforce isn't there anymore. So I mean that's been a real struggle for a lot of people.
And they do say that some of the best leaders in the world are those who've got a good army behind them. And it is just like, it's almost like, let's delegate and let other people help you. I know I've been quite guilty of just wanting to take full control in the past of things, but working also in other businesses, you kind of think, well, actually, you see people being very controlling, and you think, if you actually just relaxed a little bit and let other people do stuff for you, it would be so much more successful. But the Kickstarter team, that's interesting. I mean, what a great initiative that was. Just to bring on young people, and for you, that really helped.
Yeah, it's that's the teacher in me. That's the bit that didn't go away
definitely.
from teaching. So, I mean, I fell out with teaching. I didn't fall out with the young people. The young people were. I'll always be passionate about young people training and development, particularly those that have got challenging life circumstances. I think it's incumbent on all of us as a community to give them every opportunity that we can. The bit for me that I wanted to take into the business was giving young people opportunities to come up, find a trade, find a way to get into gainful employment and talk about sustainability, build sustainability within the community. I think that's a bit that we don't talk about so much. We talk about planetary sustainability, but how do we make sustainable communities that
play a role in being sustainable as such? No,
totally.
definitely.
But how do we find that economic stability? How do we make young people kind of leaders in their own communities, if you like? How do we give them those chances? That's been hugely important for us.
Yeah. And you find the sustainable model works for you because then you're keeping it in the family but also bringing these young people up. So what's your kind of vision with that then? Where do you want to go, do you think, with regards to the staffing element of it?
I think for us, we're always going to want to give young people opportunities, but we've also recognised that we've reached a point where we have to bring in more people who have experience behind them. We're all newbies in the industry. We are learning as we go. And
that's not always a bad thing, though, is it? Because it's quite nice to meet somebody who is quite open to saying, "Listen, I'm doing this, but I can't tell you how I'm doing this.
I know.
But the food that you get served and the coffee that you drink is beautiful, and that's all I can tell you." And sure, and there's something quite nice. There is something quite nice about not going to a well-known brand or somewhere that everybody else goes. There's something quite nice about going somewhere that that someone's like, right, I can only promise you that what I give you is beautiful. I'm just not sure how I'm doing this. But there is something quite, you don't want to become that corporate way.
Definitely
and
not.
This having that family element and young element is only even opens your doors even more, I think.
I think when Denise is my son's partner, we very often stand in the kitchen because the two of us run the kitchen and do all the cooking, the baking. And we very often stand in the back and say, people are actually paying for our food. We are making this and people are paying for it and they're coming back for more. And astonishing. It's really astonishing because neither of us are actually. I know, dear God, people are paying for this. We're having so much fun in the kitchen, and we've got brilliant customers, and I can't tell you how much that helps because they know we bring young people on. They follow our social media. We introduce people when they start with us. So if things go wrong, like something happens or something's not the right portion size or whatever. We talk to them about it and it's fine, don't worry about it. And they completely understand because they're so behind what we're doing. Yeah. And that's incredible. But we do recognise there's a time in a business when you want to grow where you do need to bring in extra expertise. So we will probably sometime soon bring in somebody that's got a training in being a chef. Not literally somebody who really is always has been paid to cook for a living. Because we want to develop products and we want to, change up the menu and get a little bit more innovative, and we need somebody to bring that professional eye into it, and that's probably where we're sitting at roundabout now. So we're going to. I suppose
it gives you the opportunity to, again, like you say, step back because you don't want to do. We can't do everything. You can't burn yourself out again. That's how it would happen. So having somebody come in to help can only free up a little bit more of your. Not that you'll never be in the kitchen, but for you to take a step back and try and understand. Right, the next 5 to 10 years, what does this? Because it will change again fundamentally the way that everything is. So that's, I know, definitely going to be a benefit.
I think so. And just, getting people with a professional eye on things like social media and marketing, and that's been critical as well, because we think we're doing okay. But we don't really know. We don't know how good it could be if we had somebody with that professional eye coming in, looking at the business and saying, I could transform that for you. So that's definitely where we need to.
Because that's what it's all about.
Upscale.
It is exactly the time. And you need to know in a business when to say, okay, I need help now. With this, I've gone as far as I can go myself. I need other people to come in and help me.
It's so nice, though, like to have that, rather than having this ego where it's like, I can do it all. I have the best social. I have the best team. I can do this. It's nice to work with, and go to a business where it's so open like that. You're like, if you want to help me, then help me. Like, it's quite, like, your customers could be there just saying like, oh, I would do this, I would do that. But it's, at least they feel part of it.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah. So what's next for you now then? What do you want to do? Because at the moment you've got a lovely unit in Ayr, and it's on a wee industrial unit, and you've done it very nicely, and you get your regular clientele, which is absolutely fantastic. But to grow, you know that you probably have to find another premises, whether it's keep the one in Ayr and another one, or just move lock, stock and barrel.
I think we're yet undecided whether it is having two kind of locations or moving where we are right now. I think the big thing that we do know we want to do is find a way to take the food to people. So at the moment we're limited because we are on an industrial estate, and we do have very regular, loyal customers, but we don't get incidental footfall where we are right now, and that's always going to limit how much we can grow where we are in Ayr. I think for us, being able to produce food which is packaged, labelled and ready to go for people is a kind of step we're going to take. So we're already looking at that. So developing those products to be shelf ready, if you like, so that we can find a way to get as much of it out to as many people as possible. There's a demand for it, we know that. We know that people like the food that although it surprises us and still astonishes us, people like the food that we're making. We know that there's a market there that has not been fully tapped into. So we have to find a way to be the problem, not be the problem, but the solution to that problem. Yeah, there is a problem there, but people will always say to us, if I had that in the workplace, I'd be delighted. How do you get that? How do you get your food out further? So we need to kind of figure out, what are the logistics of that? Do you become a mobile business? Do you become one that's selling through other vendors? Do you open more locations? And we won't know what the answer to that is fully until we've got all the products ready to go and we've tested that market. So that's the next step.
It's interesting, because you would have to change your business model.
Yeah, completely.
I don't think you could, or maybe you could because you are Superwoman, but but to run, a unit like you have, and to keep the same clientele, and to keep your, a lot of it is about rep, as you know, the good old reputation. So to keep yourself up there, whilst building this mobile business is really hard. So it would be potentially, right, we're going to move aside, or maybe you get someone else just to run the unit in Ayr and keep it as it is, and then you do your own mobile.
We just need a electric tuk-tuk. Just drive around Scotland.
Exactly. That's a great idea. Think forward by investing.
Exactly. We'll get a tuk-tuk.
Listen, you could come on board. Remember I said about bringing the professionals on board?
Actually, the electric tuk-tuk driving about.
That is very innovative. There's an idea.
There's an idea.
I think we should speak to the designers.
You could do a bespoke one for us. We'll trial it for you.
Exactly.
All part of a
branding
trial.
And all sorts. Yeah.
It is. And one of the things, the kind of harder lessons we've learned in business is we went into it all passion. And focused on what we love doing. And my son and his partner have a very keen vision around the cafe culture based on the time they spent in Berlin, and they've brought that to what we're doing so far. And we all had a discussion. It was a moment of realisation the other day when we all at the same time realised we've done this the wrong way round. Normally what you would do is, when you start businesses, go in, do the things that are going to have the high profit margin and drive that business. And then when you're in a more comfortable position, start doing the things you really want to do. But we kind of went to it completely back. And that's the lesson you learn as an entrepreneur. You find out what works, what doesn't. And we now recognise that it might be that that's not the most profitable part of the business. It might be that producing things on a larger scale and going for that economies of scale in business is where we need to focus. But it would be a challenge.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I've got a little bit of business experience as well, and I think my biggest takeaway from that is that, well, one, I think if you've got a passion about something, if you can earn money on the side while you build up that business, brilliant. But two is that sometimes the best entrepreneurs make many mistakes before that final business becomes, the best one. I kind of think you need to learn from the problems. You need to learn from the things that have gone wrong. You need to know who you want to work with. All these kind of things are massively, massively invaluable when it comes to the world of business. And until you have that, I don't think you have that, clarity of vision.
No. It's not like you say about doing anything wrong, is it? You've done nothing wrong because your business is a beautiful business and is working for you. You just learn. Like, it's just another learning. Like, that's all it is.
I think there's a courage around that as well, because society can be quite judgmental, and it can be, and you have to open yourself up to being a little bit vulnerable that way. I think in all walks of life, whether it's business or not, and saying, that didn't work, I've learned a few things from that. It's not a failure, because honestly, you don't learn if you're not making mistakes. So the only way we're going to get better is to make a few along the way and hopefully improve as we go forward. So I completely agree with that kind of mindset of it's all building towards the thing that's going to work, the best for us. So,
and you're good at taking a step back to realise that, because it's very easy to get so overwhelmed with what is working. Right, we'll just continue doing this. But like again, you're already quite willing to step back and think, right, we need to change this.
Yeah.
So, absolutely. Which is always an exciting time.
Yeah.
I think one of the running themes of this podcast series is overcoming adversity. And you are a really good example of someone who has done that, taking the bull by the horns when you burnt out. But what was that period like for you? Talk us through how difficult that was.
Very uncertain. Around about the time of the burnout, I don't actually remember very much about it, because I think when you have a complete burnout from your work, and it takes a long time to get to that point, and it's something I always remind people of if I'm now getting into conversation with people who have hit that wall themselves. You don't get there overnight. It can take a year, 2 years, several years sometimes to get you to the point where you need to stop. So you're not going to recover overnight. So the first thing I learned was, before I jumped knee-jerk reaction style into something different, I had to give myself time to literally recover, get back on my feet, and have a really good long hard think about what I wanted the future to look like. And from there, that, as I say, when I was thinking about my own recovery, and that brought the link to food and the link between nutrition and well-being for me. It feels like something insurmountable when you start. And the only thing I would say to anybody, if they are at that brink of thinking about changing direction, is just start. Just do it. Don't sit on the fence forever wondering what if, because I was probably the last person in terms of risk taking that would ever have done it until that point. And you've just got to start and believe, and start finding the people that are going to support you and help you and point you in the right direction.
Did you physically feel the burnout?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I felt it physically, emotionally, mentally. It took me a long time. I slept for about 6 weeks after I stopped. Morning and night, I just slept. And it took a long time to get to that point, and I had to give myself that recovery time as well.
Yeah. But sometimes, again, we talk about overcoming adversity. Sometimes, again, and I'm a firm believer in this, Asha, it's hitting rock bottom. You have to hit rock bottom to really know how to survive and what the good bits are. And they say that a lot with athletes as well, is that sometimes it takes, the best athletes have to hit rock bottom in their careers or lives, whatever it might be, before they really know what the good stuff is. And I really believe that, actually, in life, because that obviously gave you the impetus to go, do you know what, I'm just going to crack on and I'm going to do my own thing.
And it was probably the push I needed to do it. I could have possibly stayed in teaching for another 10 or 15 years and moderately enjoyed it, but I wouldn't have had that fire in my belly about what I was doing when I went to work in the morning. I wouldn't have had that. Fear can be exciting sometimes as well. Do you know what I mean by that? You can be frightened about something, but it can be exciting at the same time.
But it's all yours at the end of the day. Like, your fear exists, of course it does, but it's yours. Like, it's all, and the fear can go away by the actions that you take. So there's something quite nice about that. Like, everyone wants to work hard and do something, but if it's your own baby as such, the working hard will pay off.
I know.
And that's even more exciting.
I think so. It's different doing it for yourself.
Definitely.
Well, it certainly didn't look like there was any fear when we were down in your lovely premises in Ayr not that long ago. And your cakes, I mean, I remember Asha and I were talking about it. We were just blown away by, well, one, how nice they looked, how pretty they were, but also the flavour combinations. How did you work that out? Because I actually was, I mentioned this at the beginning of this episode, it's just actually realising what you can do with plant-based foods.
I think it's just, you have to play in the kitchen. I think we all need more play in our lives in general. Don't you? You have to have fun. And I think when you really enjoy it, it's easy to experiment, accept some flavor. I said to you before, we've had some disasters in the kitchen. We have a lot of baking disasters, but we have a lot of baking successes too. So I kind of took recipes I knew I had done before from the many years when I tried having the cake business on the side. And I just gave myself the challenge of taking out the dairy, taking out the eggs, so that every cake on the counter was plant-based. So we looked at cakes like the hummingbird cake, which is the banana, pineapple, toasted pecan, a traditional American cake. And we just made a kind of version of that didn't have eggs, didn't have butter of any kind in it. And it worked. And then when you find out, there's such a science to baking, when you find out the combinations that work, you can then play around with the flavours. So we had a really good chocolate cake, for example. It had all the right textures and flavours. And one of our Kickstart young people came in and were talking to her and said, "What's your favourite cake?" And she said, "A red velvet." I thought, we've never tried that. Let's give a red velvet a go. It's now our most popular seller.
Wow.
It's the most popular cake in the bakery, the red velvet.
So what do you use as a substitute then?
So there's loads that I'm not giving away
that
my trade secrets here.
Not that I'm
She's got a notepad and a pen here.
Can you just move that pen for a minute?
Exactly. Yeah, we're not really recording this.
So there's a lot of different things you can do to try and get the reactions in baking that eggs would have given you. So what we tend to use though is a thing called a flax egg. So you take ground flax meal, you mix it with water, and it kind of congeals and gives you that structure that an egg would previously have given. And that works in the kind of cakes that we are doing all the time. We swap out butter for a plant-based butter. Works just as well. You would never know the difference in it. And we get the lightness, we get the moistness in the cakes, we get the flavour in the cakes. You have to play around with the quantities until you get the basic that you want. But once you have the basic recipe for a cake, you can then look at what the difference are. You can. It's the same with the brownies. We do lots of different flavours of brownies. And once we've got that base one done, we can then start thinking, well, what do I want to add to that? What the flavours we can play about and have a bit of fun here.
It's all alternatives to everything, isn't there? Like alternatives to butter, alternatives to eggs, like all this stuff that does exist in the market, but people are just unaware of it. Like they just don't know that you can do that. Because it's just not. Well, in my life, I don't see it as often as you like to see. Like everything that you look for if you're baking brownies, you're never really going to be served a plant-based option.
No.
When you imagine when you Google the top searches, it's a plant-based version. It's always going to be dairy, you're always going to have eggs, milk, you're always going to have the basic ingredients.
I think the day will come when plant-based things will be offered as a matter of course. It won't be something you specifically go and look out. So of all the cakes that we have on the counter, if you were to bring somebody in who was plant-based, somebody who wasn't, I don't think they would be able to tell that the cakes were plant-based.
I couldn't. When we were there, I was blown. I had you wouldn't have known.
No.
They were delicious.
And that's the aim for us. We want people to be able to make that choice without feeling as if they're being denied something on the taste front or on the presentation front. We want it to be a pleasurable eating experience so that there's an incentive there to go and choose that over the other options.
More and more people will, won't they? We'll soon have PB on the old menus as well as
it's like where we got to with like calories and everything, like the menus you get your calories next to your menu choices now. Like that wasn't a thing.
Oh no.
Was it 10 years ago?
No, I recently went somewhere in a workplace and yes, calories in my latte. I mean, I've never been so good off a latte.
It's an eye-opener, isn't it?
Yeah. I know. And that never existed. And now you have your vegan options or your gluten-free options. So it is only a matter of time now. Your plant-based, of course it is. That has to be the next introduction onto our menus. Because people are genuinely interested in it. And if it's an option for people I think would have it. I think it's just because it's not an option on the menu now that they just think, right, I'll go for the cabin steak or whatever they then go for.
Yeah.
If they offered it and they offered a reasonable option and they put some thought and creativity into it, I think you're absolutely right, because it's maybe the one time when people would pick a plant-based option because somebody else has made it for them and they've made it in such a tasty, delicious way that it's an incentive to buy. But if there's nothing good on the menu, I don't believe there's an excuse for any food place not to offer at least one plant-based option now for people. There's such a demand. The majority of people are now interested in plant-based food. That wasn't the case 2-3 years ago. People have an interest in it. It's on the horizon. Everybody's aware of the environment and their health after the pandemic. So people are looking to have it made as easy as we, as in the food industry, have to make it as easy as possible for people to say, I'll choose that. And that was really good.
And also make people realise it's not this big scary thing. It's actually, it makes sense. It's
it's quite like the vegan option, isn't it? Because you can go, like I've got quite a lot of vegan friends and it's always that thing like, right, what are you going to eat? And the menus the vegan options are either beautiful and you think, right, I'll have a vegan option because they're great, or there's nothing. Like, or it's like, right, they're going to have a bowl of chips because that is kind of how it is. So restaurants are either dedicated to doing it and doing it right, or it's kind of like half-half. Like, we'll serve you a bowl of chips, but we're not a vegan restaurant. So like you say, it has to be something that is worth getting. Like it has, like, there's no point saying it, right, we're going to serve you this. That's really boring. Because nobody's going to be, they're all interested in it for whatever the reason, colours or whatever it may be.
I think it's more these days also, it's just about perception. I mean,
or Instagram. Everyone wants to Instagram a nice bowl, don't they? Like,
but that's a certain generation. So, but from the other side, so not that long ago, a few years ago, certainly before coronavirus, I went to an old-fashioned pub type restaurant with a friend who's celiac, and I won't tell you her name because she'll kill me. But anyway, we went to order some food and there was nothing on the menu. I mean, like literally nothing. So she asked the waiter, and we were like the only people in there, whether they could remove one or two of the ingredients, because there's so many ingredients that go into food, who knew, that have gluten in them. And the guy, just genuinely clueless. I mean, I don't mean that in a nasty way, but he just had no idea. He started, suggesting all these things, and she's like, "Yes, that has gluten in it." Like, well, how about such and such? Yes, it has gluten. And then he was like, "Oh, I've got an idea. How about this?" And she's like, "Yes, it has gluten." I tell you what, just give me soup. And you're just like, but I bet he puts a bit of bread beside that, and it's just, I think it's just the lack of understanding and the perceptions of these. But I think you're right, Catherine. Those perceptions will change, and definitely. Things will grow. And the more, it's this old phrase that we trot out all the time, you've got to see it to be it. And it's the same with any food or change. Once it comes in, it's the same as electric cars, to a certain degree. We're starting to see them on the roads all the time
more
now.
often now.
Yeah,
I'm parked in between two electric cars this morning.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was not. Yeah. That would not have been a thing.
No, even last year, I would say that. I mean, we know that the industry has increased massively over the last year. So it's just about becoming more normal.
I think so. And taking the fear out of it. I think when it comes to things like electrical vehicles, people don't fully understand how they operate, and there's a fear around making that transition from what they know. It's just a fear of the unknown, isn't it? What they know into something that's completely new. Yeah. And it's the same with any consumer choice, I guess, isn't it? Whether it's a car, whether it's food, it's just how do they transition from everything they thought was the right choice, to recognising that there's a different, better choice to make.
That's right. And we were talking about an electric tuk-tuk, which I still am totally buying into. I still think that is a great idea.
That's the answer.
Please do. I'm telling you, there's something in that. Definitely.
Sustainable food, sustainable driving.
Totally. Yeah. But what about the Mach-E? Because it's the car that we introduced you to. You already knew about it, actually, and you told me that it was the car of your dreams. Yeah. And just by chance, it's the car that we happened to be driving when we came along to do a lovely video with you.
The face of Catherine driving it. Like, I don't know if I can drive this. You can drive this. You'll be totally fine.
I know, but I had you sitting beside me, practically holding my hand.
And then second time round, she was like, "No, I'm used to this now." Yeah, like, of course you are.
What a dream car! It's exceptional.
Yeah,
it's it's honestly the smoothest car I've ever driven. The whole experience, from the minute you sit in, it's smooth, it's slick, it's just it's beautiful.
It's really luxurious, but I think it does. It kind of feels like a Mustang, but it's also, for me, it was just. Yeah, it was so smooth. It was so quiet, but I really like the space. I'm a mum of two kids, so anything with space is great. It's so interesting to hear
other points of view, because I look at it on a daily basis, obviously, with looking at tech and its spec and all these big things that everybody always wants to know. But just as a genuine customer who is obviously interested in that, but is genuinely enjoying the car because they enjoy the car. Never mind the B&O speakers and the panoramic roof. It genuinely is because they enjoy the car and driving the car. And that was the most exciting part, because your face was like, "This is beautiful." And it is beautiful. And it's nice to see that angle rather than me coming at it being like, "Right, we need to cover all B&O, we need to do this, we need to do that." So it was so enjoyable.
Yeah, and everything is costing so much now. The cost of fuel has rocketed. I mean, I'm actually genuinely thinking about an electric car now. What about yourself? Because running costs of businesses and everything else.
Absolutely. And I think also, if you as a business are aiming towards being sustainable or in any capacity, I think that's another really good way to do it, is to look at the vehicles that you have on the road, look at how much mileage are you clocking up, what impact could you make to the environment if you switched from a petrol car to an electric car.
I think consumers are really switched on because they are so aware of, in some way, every business is now saying they're sustainable, no matter how it is. However, how are you sustainable? Because it's all fun, it's all easy enough to shout about it on social. However, a consumer wants to know, so what makes you sustainable? And it's plant-based foods or whatever it may be, and then it does get down to, so what are you using to transport your foods? And it's still a petrol or a diesel vehicle. So you're not 100% sustainable as of yet, because the vehicles you have on the road are not electric. And I think they are savvy. They are at that point where they are that savvy now.
I think so. People question you more. Absolutely. And we spoke about that last time, and they're right to do that, because if you are claiming as a business that you do something, you have to be open to questions from your customers about that, and you have to be willing to get into that conversation with your customers as well, even if it is, again, that honesty of saying, "We're not there completely yet, here's what we're doing about it, here, this is what we're aiming towards." I think just staying open and honest with people is really important.
Like you say, it's all step by step, isn't it?
It is.
There is a step by step.
Yeah.
As long as somebody is seen to be doing something, but with the knowledge of, right, we still have this next step to take.
Yeah.
People are more understanding and taken to, like, they're not fully there yet, but they are aware of what they need to do to be there.
Yeah.
No, definitely.
I find it quite interesting with when I was filming the video, Asha, I haven't told you this actually, a lot of females and partners of females said to me, that's my wife's dream car. So
Wow,
yeah,
really?
I find that really interesting. It seems to, in fact, there's someone, one of my neighbours has bought a Mustang Mach-E, and also a female. And I think actually, I wonder whether that's, whether is it the look, or is it just exactly as we've said? It just ticks so many different boxes.
Yes.
But I thought that was interesting. I wonder if historically you look through the history of Mustang buyers.
I always thought it was quite a male car. It's interesting you should say
That's my
that.
perception, but you may be able to tell us
I wonder
differently.
if it's a change from a 5 litre though, so it's gone from being this like quite a man's sporty car, noisy, and that kind of feel, to being quite classy and quiet and beautiful looking, like very sleek. Whereas before, don't get me wrong, they're beautiful, but they are a bit chunkier, and they're maybe that little bit male dominant, like male preference rather than a female preference. But like you say, it's very interesting. But everything in them, like there's so much for like women look at cars differently to how men look at cars, don't they? So there's so many different reasons why.
Yeah, it's so true, isn't it? So with your lovely Mustang Mach-E
in red,
when you in red, when you
the colour and
absolutely when you get your dream car, what's your ultimate goal, Catherine? We've spoken about doing delivery options, but if you could have, big blue sky thinking here, if you could have your main goal up there in the sky, what would it be?
We would have developed a brand which people trusted, which people knew, which we had taken to as many people as possible. And I do think that will be keeping a premise where you can have people coming in to enjoy that cafe culture with our food, but also having that mobile food element where we potentially take food to places where there's high footfall, a high number of professionals. It's astonishing the number of people who work in professions hugely demanding, hugely stressful, no access to nutritious food at key times during their day. We saw it in the hospital recently, where doctors and nurses were working through the night. They had no access to nutritious food at all. I've spoken to lawyers who work in the court system. There is nowhere around the courts for them to get accessible food, good food. And there is a problem there that we need to find a way to solve. How do we take that plant-based nutrition to people where they need it most to nourish them during their working day? So for us at the moment, we are thinking that the blue sky thinking is that we find a way to be mobile, to literally move around and take the food to the people.
But life is on the go, isn't it? I live my life on the go. Like, it is one of those situations. You go to Tesco for your 3-pound meal deal and you stop in on the way home to get your dinner. Whereas it's not, if things are more accessible, if you were more accessible, however it may be, the chances are probably just, if you were easy for me just to pop in and get something and take it back, 100%, definitely.
You have to make it as easy for people as possible.
Definitely.
And if part of your values and your ethos as a business is to support people to make sustainable choices, it's on us to make that as easy as possible for them to do that. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, Catherine, listen, good luck.
Thank you.
With all of that. I'm sure you'll be a huge success. Asha and I, in the meantime, are going to start designing tuk-tuks.
Yes.
On the side.
For Barefaced Food, so we'll get the branding ready.
Totally. Yeah. Good luck to you in Barefaced Foods, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for joining this episode. Back with you next time.